audience or anything. And
Yeah.
I think it's natural.
It is natural.
Normal.
Yeah.
Even if you're in front of just one person.
Totally.
It's like-
Small audience.
Yes. Okay. Hello, welcome to KPFA's Local Station Board Candidate Debate. Here today, this is candidate debate number 1. We are with 3 candidates, Sharon Adams, Bill Campisi, and Cory. So before we start, I'm going to request that they each introduce themselves. They have 1 minute each to introduce themselves. And so, Sharon Adams.
Hello, I'm Sharon Adams, and I'm running for re-election to the KPFA Local Station Board. I'm currently serving on the Local Station Board, and I was elected about 3 years ago. I'm treasurer on the Local Station Board right now. KPFA and Pacifica stand at a critical crossroads with a $3.2 million loan to Pacifica that's been secured by the KPFA studio building as well as other properties within the Pacifica Foundation network. Right now, there is no apparent plan to repay that loan, and except for vague statements about refinancing the loan. So I am committed to keeping KPFA and Pacifica financially sound and saving the KPFA studio building. And so I hope that you will vote for me to be re-elected to the KPFA Local Station Board.
Thank you. Bill Campisi?
Yeah, hi. I also am a member of the Local Station Board. I've been a member for about 3 years, so I'm running for re-election like Sharon. For one brief period of time, I was also a member of the National Board. I found it a very disturbing experience and I resigned. I think the National Board is a very problematic structure in Pacifica, and I think it needs to be reorganized. And I have been working on bylaws with other people that would change the way that Pacifica is structured. I'll probably talk about that more later tonight as we go along. That's my primary focus. I'm also concerned about the $3.2 million loan, which I think, well, anyway, I'll talk about this more as we go on tonight.
Thank you. Cory?
My name is Cory. This is also my second round with the Local Station Board. I also have the unfortunate obligation to serve on the National Board as well. I'm also chair of the National Finance Committee, and so I'm with Bill and Sharon on the issue of the $3.2 million loan. It's kind of my primary focus. It's the whole reason that I'm running again. When I first joined 3 years ago, my focus was to bring my business experience into KPFA because most people don't have my background, and I thought it might be of value to the organization. But now that the loan is here and needs to be upped when it comes due in about a year, I wanted to be here, wanted to be around for that. So that's my primary reason for running again.
Thank you. Before delving into the format, I just wanted to speak on behalf of 2 candidates that could not be here tonight. Susan De Silva. I regret that I cannot be there tonight. I was chair of the local board when the current bylaws were written. We didn't all agree, but in the end we produced results. Now the bylaws need to be rewritten to provide a more workable structure with smaller boards and clearer lines of authority. I can help do that. I'm also very interested in getting KPFA and Pacifica's financial affairs in order by working with the other station boards to come up with a plan to cover outstanding debts. Precious assets like our studio building and KPFA's building, LA's building, which also houses the archives, are at risk. As it happens, I believe I can work very productively with the other members of this panel, so I hope you will vote for me and for these other candidates as well. That was Susan De Silva. Another candidate, Mark Van Landuyt. KPFA is important. KPFA matters. KPFA is needed. Independent journalism is important. Truth is important. The voices of the people are important. KPFA is needed now more than ever. KPFA listeners are important. KPFA's future is important. We have so much to do. Please support KPFA's future. Please support United for Independent Radio Coalition candidates for the board. So now moving on, I'll explain the structure briefly and then we'll start. We're going to start with Sharon and then we're going to iterate through each of you, and you will be assigned a question randomly, which comes from a sequence that I generated ahead of time. And from a master list of questions, which was compiled from questions of historical importance as well as those submitted by candidates and listener members. And you will have 1 minute to address the question, then each of you will have 1 minute to follow up, and you'll have another minute to readdress the question. So to start, the first number we have here is question 5. Do the managers at KPFA and Pacifica get enough support to do their jobs? If not, what would you change to give them that support? Sharon Adams, you can start.
That is kind of an interesting question. I feel like the local station board does support the management. At least the majority of the local station board does support the management. I believe that it is important to support management because they make the decisions about the station and how to bring it forward. And it's very difficult to make decisions by committee. So I'm not entirely, I would say the best way to support the management in the future might be to change the bylaws, because as the current structure stands, there's very diffuse authority and diffuse lines of authority, so it's difficult to sometimes know how proper management should go. But I do support management.
Thank you. Bill Campisi?
Well, what the question raises for me is the issue of the relationship of the local station board members, the elected members of the local station board, and management, and what, whether or not the local station board should have direct control over management decisions of our radio station. I am of the group of people on the LSB who believe that we have to let the manager, our manager, Quincy at this time, manage the radio station and let he and the program director decide on programming decisions. I view our role, or I view the LSB's role, as one where we want to look at the overall picture and see if the station is progressing in the right direction. If it's not progressing in the right direction, we're not going to make management decisions. We'll change the manager. I think that's our role. We're not supposed to be into the mix of day-to-day decisions at the station. That's how I view it. So we best support management by looking at a broad picture of what's going on at the station and determining whether it's being successful or not.
Thank you. Chris Cory?
Yeah, in some ways, the other two are tripping over this question for the same reason that I'm going to, namely that the line of authority is such that the LSB isn't actually responsible for managing the manager or even recommending things to the manager. The manager is supposed to have basically complete autonomy, and our responsibility, our obligation, is to review the manager and make sure that the manager is doing an effective job. And if the manager is not doing an effective job, our responsibility is to vote to replace him. But beyond that, our authority is extremely limited to interfere, to obligate, to suggest what management should do. That having been said, if we were more, I guess, in order to have any influence on the manager, we would have to have a stronger review process than we currently do, which is, I think, a fairly weak link in that chain.
Thank you. Sharon, you can readdress.
Well, I do find the question kind of odd. I'm looking at it again. Do the managers at KPFA and Pacifica get enough support to do their job? I think that would be a question to ask them, honestly. I mean, that's why I was sort of, didn't quite know what to say to it. And Chris and Bill are both exactly right. I happen to bring the bylaws, and we have all these things that we can do, but we really have nothing that we can do as far as management except review annually and hire and fire, which is drastic. So just in terms of day-to-day management, we don't have a lot of input in that. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So moving on to the next question, which is for Bill Campisi.
Okay.
It's number 6, community advisory boards. Only KPFA and one other station of the 5 Pacifica stations are in compliance with the CPB requirements for having a CAB, Community Advisory Board. Do you think having a functioning CAB is necessary? Why or why not? What are the primary roles of a functioning CAB? You can start.
Well, my experience of the CAB has been having the people who are directing our CAB come to LSB meetings and give reports about what they have learned from the community of KPFA listeners. So they go around with questionnaires to events like the Crafts Fair, for example, and provide listeners with questionnaires about various topics about the radio station. I have always thought that that was a important thing to do. I liked hearing the reports. I liked reading those reports. The problem that we have, I think, is that a lot of people like to listen to the radio station. They want to turn it on. They want to hear our programming. They don't want to be involved with the radio station. They just like to hear the programs. So we have this democratic structure, but on the other hand, we have very limited participation. And so the CAB is helpful to a certain extent in terms of surveying our listenership as best they can. It's a lot of work, and it's interesting. I haven't seen how we can use that information in our activities as an LSB.
Thank you. Chris, Cory?
Would you mind repeating the question?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
So community advisory boards, only KPFA and one other station of the 5 Pacifica stations are in compliance with the CPB requirements for having a community advisory board. Do you think having a functioning community advisory board is necessary? Why or why not? What are the primary roles of a functioning community advisory board?
Well, I can answer the second half of the question first, or I guess there were 3 parts to that question. But it's necessary because it's part of our compliance. In order for us to be compliant with the CPB, we have to have the community advisory boards. As far as, and so having them function probably makes sense as well, because it's pointless to have an advisory board which doesn't actually do anything. I'd actually like to see the CAB more involved, more part of the overall structure of Pacifica even. But it's difficult for me to fathom how we can do. It might be better for CABs to actually have a seat or present their findings to the national board rather than the local station board, because there's a lot of really valuable information that comes out of their findings. They're the ones that actually do the outreach into the community and find what people are interested in, what they want to hear, and I just think that their input would be valuable, since we don't actually have much, or even passing it through to the station manager. Somebody else who actually has authority over programming. But I've always found their reports, though extremely interesting and detailed, to be kind of superfluous to the functioning of the LSB.
Thank you. Sharon Adams?
Yeah, the CABs, the Community Advisory Boards, are required by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and also by our bylaws, so that's why they're necessary. They're required by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in order to get funds, but funds are not coming to Pacifica because there's many other things that are causing many other violations within Pacifica, so there are no Corporation for Public Broadcasting funds coming. But nevertheless, we at KPFA have continued our CAB, and it is required by the bylaws. And I actually want to thank Mary Ann Thomas Rich Stone and Craig Dunkerley, our current CAB members, because it is a lot of work to do that. And Craig Dunkerley is actually running for the LSB here, so he will be leaving the CAB, and the CAB does need more people. So
Thanks for that pitch.
It really does, and it is necessary, as I just said. They do the community needs assessment, and that is a very important thing, and it is interesting, and we find out what programs people like and things like that. They haven't been attending our LSB meetings and giving reports. So yes, they are very important and necessary.
Thank you. Bill Campisi, readdress?
I don't have anything more to say on that topic.
Okay, so moving on to the next question, number 9. What is your understanding of KPFA's and Pacifica's financial challenges, and how do you propose to resolve these problems? Consider the deficit, consider current issues such as the pension funds of KPFA workers. Describe how you would work to resolve these issues.
Man, that is a beautiful question. So that is the million-dollar question. One of the things that could be done, should be done, and hopefully will be done in this year is to get us back in compliance in terms of audits. We've been striving really hard. We have a new outside firm that's working on putting the audits together. The timeline looks like it'll actually make it. And if it does, we'd be eligible for CPB funding, which would be $1 million, basically, for every year that we're in compliance. It's 10% of our overall funding. We have not been getting it, and we've been running deficits in excess of that amount, so it would help close the gap significantly. There's a whole bunch of other structural programming, in terms of program sharing, there's all sorts of things that could be done for lowering the cost structure and raising the revenue of the organization. But getting into compliance with the audits would be a really easy win for the organization.
Thank you. Sharon Adams?
Yes. Well, you did ask about the pensions, and so I may have this not entirely correct because I didn't review this before I came here. But if I recall correctly, the issue with the pensions is also part of the larger Pacifica issue. And it goes to the governance structure of Pacifica and why it is so unwieldy. As I understand from talking with our treasurer, KPFA's treasurer, the KPFA was not allowed to fund the pensions because the entire organization had to fund the pensions at the same time. And one of the stations couldn't come up with about $10,000 to $12,000 to fund their pension. Therefore, KPFA could not fund its pension, even though it had the money in the budget to do so. That's the kind of management across the network that makes it so difficult and increases the cost to KPFA, even when we had the money to do it at the time. Now there's a greater cost because the funds weren't put in at the time. So that's just one example of how the financial situation is so difficult within Pacifica.
Thank you. Bill Campisi?
Yeah, so we have a $3.2 million loan that we had to take out because of a debt that was incurred by our New York station related to transmitter lease that was signed, 15 years ago. And this loan could crush Pacifica and potentially crush KPFA. It's due and payable in a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Then there's this pension bill, which I think is close to $1 million. There's penalties associated with that probably. And the reason that Pacifica does not function properly is because of the structure. It's like the Balkans. We have 5 countries, 5 different stations. There's no national management that's effective because of the way the national board is set up. We're balkanized. And the 3 stations that are doing the worst in the network control the network, control the national board, or they can control it. It's a terrible structure, and that's why Pacifica is failing. We have to change the structure if we want to have a national network.
Thank you. Chris Cory?
I want to thank Bill and Sharon for kind of picking up the loose ends of the discussion, because it's a huge topic. It's an enormous topic, and obviously it's a critical topic for the organization. the debt structure, the declining listenership. There's a whole bunch of factors that are leading us off a cliff, and something is going to have to be done over this next year. That's why it's very important to elect people who are smart and thoughtful and caring about this stuff to their local station board, so they can get elevated to the Pacifica National Board, because that's the path to leadership for this organization. And without good leadership, I don't hold any hope for getting out of this. So we need people that'll work together, that have a common vision for how to solve these problems. And with that, I'm a lot more confident that we can get around this. Right now, it's very factional and divided, and it's hard to get anything done. So a more coherent management would be extremely valuable.
Thank you. So we can start the rotation again. So number 11 is going to Sharon. Let's see. Okay, the vast majority of programming on KPFA is produced by unpaid staff. What are the pros and the cons of this? You have 1 minute.
Okay, I did take notes. I find that question sort of odd. I have to say, when I just found some of the questions maybe avoiding some of the main issues that I find to be relevant. And what I thought on that question is, there's fantastic programming that is produced by the unpaid staff, and there's fantastic programming produced by the paid staff. There's really mediocre programming that is produced by unpaid staff, and there's really mediocre programming that's produced by paid staff. I like the quality of the programming, so I don't know. There's always been this divide between paid and unpaid, and from what I understand, it was created sort of artificially and through the greater Pacifica machinations. Again, I believe it came out of, I can't quite recall, but it used to be that, this is a lot of history, so, but it used to be that the union did represent the paid and unpaid staff, and they wanted to continue, but for reasons that aren't entirely clear to me, that was changed, and now the union only represents the paid staff, and that's what causes some of the difficulties. I do believe both are essential to running the station.
Thank you. Bill Campisi?
Well, my attitude about programming is it's not in my bailiwick, nor do I think it's in the bailiwick of the LSB. What I think that we hire or should hire good managers, good program directors who have to balance old programming with new programming, whether it comes from paid programmers or unpaid programmers who create the program. The question is the programming good? And the LSB is not going to select programs and say to the manager, oh, you can't put this program in the air, or you should put that program on the air. That's for the managers to do. And our success as a station will be if we hire good managers who can feel what the public wants to hear on the left and produces good programming that gets listeners to come and listen to our station because the programming is provocative and interesting. And it's not up to the LSB to tell the manager or the programming director what to put on the station. Because otherwise, staff tries to draw the LSB into this fight frequently, and many of us say, no, we're not going to get in the middle of this. We want to see if the station is successful, that is because the programming is good.
Thank you. Chris Cory?
Yeah, I'm with Bill on this in that we get approached a lot about this question, actually. It's probably the most common thing. If I walk up to somebody, a friend of mine, and say, oh, I'm serving on the local station board at KPFA. Oh, can you get Hard Knock Radio back or what? It's always that. It always goes to programming. It's always programming. And the LSB, unfortunately, has very, very little influence over programming. There's a programming committee at the national level that has some influence, but Bill's right. It really does come down to management. So if we hire good managers, if we hire managers that are in accordance with the vision of our own station, they will seek out and find the programming necessary to do that. I kind of enjoyed what Sharon had to say about the kind of the qualitative nature of the programming depending on paid and unpaid staff. I'm hadn't really thought of it before, but I think that was a really good insight, that it doesn't seem to matter that much, that the quality has to do with the programmer, not what their status is within the organization, and that has entirely to do with the person who does the hiring. So,
Thank you. Sharon?
I mean, I guess I would just like to say there's been this divide between the paid and the unpaid staff. But I'm not staff, and I don't spend a lot of time at the station, so I don't know, but it seems that perhaps the divide is going away. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I do know this. I mean, I don't know what's happening within staff. I just don't know. But I do know that Pacifica has just created an employee handbook, and it should perhaps ease some of the feelings of maybe that the unpaid staff was being treated differently than the paid staff, because I believe that the employee handbook will set standards that should apply to all, both paid and unpaid.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Next question, let's see, number 14 goes to Bill Campisi. This is actually okay, you can tell me if we pick another question because it's very similar to the last one, but should the LSB involve itself in programming? Describe the extent of involvement and the pros and the cons.
I feel like we've just talked about that. I don't know. Do you?
yeah, I would
Sure.
agree with
Yeah,
that.
I do think that you covered that in your responses to the last one.
Is that actually in the bylaws, by the way, Sharon?
You know, that's why I brought them specifically for that question. And the only power that the LSB has in terms of programming is it's rather long, as much
Well,
of the
we
bylaws.
got a little time here.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can
to work,
take a pause from the format if you want to.
to work with the station management. This is what the LSB should do: to work with station management to ensure that station programming fulfills the purposes of the foundation and is responsive to the diverse needs of listeners and communities served by the station, and that station policies and procedures for making programming decisions and for program evaluation are working in a fair, collaborative, and respectful manner to provide quality programming. Lots of words that say we really don't have any power.
Exactly. There is kind of the key word of diversity in there, though, and I know that diversity is part of the mission of the
Yes.
LSB to make sure that the station maintains diversity.
So then perhaps, sorry, go ahead.
Well, this is a little bit of an aside. One of the problems I think with the organizational structure of Pacifica is it because I hate to say this, I'm a lawyer, and when I hear this distinction between paid and unpaid staff, I just get nervous because that's not a legal distinction that has, I mean, there's employees and people who are agents and not employees. That's the legal distinction. And Pacifica tends to organize itself around different concepts other than legal concepts, which is okay unless a problem develops, like a lawsuit, and then suddenly the legal distinctions matter. And I haven't seen this employee handbook, but I'd be willing to bet you that no lawyer has reviewed this handbook and gone through it to see if it fits with certain important concepts about law. And that's the whole problem with Pacifica. It just does whatever it wants, who's ever there on a particular day or whatever, without paying attention to things that need to be done.
So actually, I think a more relevant question, which specifically refers to the role of the local station board, is this one, and let me know. Please describe the KPFA target audience. Is KPFA programming representative of the needs of listeners in the listening area? Please consider demographics, age, race, and ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and political spectrum. Consider strategies for communicating with listeners to get their feedback.
Well, again, I like the programs that I listen to on KPFA. KPFA is a pretty successful station. It could be more successful, but it's a pretty successful station. It's the most successful station in the network. It gets a lot of support in Northern California, relatively speaking. So what that tells me is that people want to hear the programming that we put out. I mean, there are a number of programs that I don't care for. For example, I'm not particularly excited by herbal medicine, so I don't listen to that program, but I love the news. I love certain music programs. So how I gauge how we're doing in terms of our programming, what I know about it is what I see in terms of our fundraising. Now, I do think there should be more outreach to younger people, and I do think we should do that through high schools, and I do think we should invite young people who are interested in journalism to come to our station and put on some programs about what's going on in their lives in their high schools. I think we need more of that. We're too old. And they could teach us something about podcasts and stuff like that. So I think there should be more outreach to the youth. And I've said that before.
Thank you. Cory?
So the question was, what demographics are we trying to reach? I guess that was the basic gist of the question.
And does programming represent it? And any strategies to rectify that if it doesn't?
Okay. Yeah. Once again, I mean, it's not really the LSB's responsibility to be involved with this, but just to answer the question in the abstract.
Oh, sorry. I just because we did just read in the bylaws
was the other one, yeah.
That it is listed in there that it is part of the responsibility to ensure that station programming fulfills the purposes and is responsive to the needs of the listener.
So we're talking about the purposes, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's
the mission of the station.
Right.
Okay,
that's actually yeah.
Okay, that's
the
more
parallel.
or less the station. Okay, I mean more or less the question. Sorry. So no, that's fine. So in terms of what demographics we're trying to reach and serve, the Greater Bay Area listening audience is the one that we're after, but it's a wide and diverse group. I think that that the way we do things is more well suited to people who are not interested in listening to mainstream programming. So there's a whole, and that's a very wide swath of material. It's also a somewhat narrower demographic than just taking the Greater Bay Area region. But just in terms of the mission of the station, it would be to give an alternative voice to public affairs, to musical programming, and to serve underserved groups. And once again, this is kind of a management level issue that needs to be taken care of, and it's up to the managers to do it. But that's the function of the station and the audience that it's trying to reach. I agree with Bill that we definitely need to target younger people. It worries me. The long-term prospects for the station worry me, to have an older audience that's slowly declining in number, and to not have enough outreach to younger people.
Thank you. Sharon?
Thank you. Yeah, I really like what Chris said about that our audience is the Greater Bay Area listening audience, and I tend to agree with that. And I think there's a deep, deep hunger for truth. That's what I feel. I feel there's a hunger for truth. And I actually take in a lot of different media, and I've heard that millennials are now 40% of the voting population, and of course they're going to be a large part of our listening audience. And millennials also are very skeptical about news sources, and they won't just believe something that they hear on the radio or on the internet. They will check out their sources. So when I hear stuff that I have heard on KPFA that is not, that is perhaps a little bit partisan, I think that it's somewhat, this is just my opinion, but I think that people that are seeking truth are not going to be drawn to that. So I really believe that we need to have a very strong emphasis on factual truth-telling. And one of the examples that I want to give is Jimmy Dore, the Jimmy Dore Show. He actually is on KPFK because he's out of LA. So KPFA could run his show through AudioPort, and I really wish they would, because he has a show on YouTube. And about a month ago, I started watching his show, and he had 440,000 subscribers. Okay, not paid, but subscribers on YouTube. And in the past month, he grew 25,000 subscribers. That's more than we have as members of KPFA. So he's saying something that people want to hear. And that's what I think we need. We need very critical analysis of the very difficult times that we live in right now. That's what I think would really help all people.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking of the range of programming that we put on that is different from other media or what other media present. And I was thinking about our programs on socialist and radical economics that we put on that you don't hear a lot of or hear at all in other stations. We have strong programming in support of the Palestinians. Again, you don't hear that anywhere else in media, I don't think, much. We just have programming about different parts of the world. I'm thinking of Voices of the Middle East, which program I like very much. Again, you just don't hear the same points of view and the same voices on other stations. So we are reaching audiences in a way that is not available in from other stations. But the other thing that we need to do is, and this is where the kids come in, is because of the way media is now being presented through the internet and podcasts, things I don't really understand, we need to get an understanding of how to use the new media to deliver content that people want to hear. And for that, I think we got to get younger people involved in our station.
Thank you. So let's see, we're moving on to, it's you next, right?
Yeah.
So let's see, number 15. What is number 15?
Didn't we just do 15?
I think that was 11.
We did
That's
14. We did 14.
Okay.
This is, again, and I think if you want to skip a question, we can do that too. This is back on programming, which is why. Do we need a program council? If one were to exist, would it be who would be on it, and how would they get on it? What are the pros and cons of having a program council?
Okay, well, I can kind of answer that question without just simply brushing it off, and that's that we do kind of have a program council, but it's at the national level. We might. Do we have a local? Do we have one for the? I didn't think so. So there's a programming committee that's a subcommittee of the Pacific National Board, and of course you have to the path to the national board is through the LSB. So people that are on the LSB can run for this committee. And they do have some influence over programming organizational wide, especially kind of the vision of how that's to be done. Not specifically what it is, but how it is to be done. So, for example, this idea of program sharing has become kind of popular in the network right now, where there are successful programs in every station, in every market, and sometimes the markets don't have enough overlap to make it work for every single station, but sometimes the markets do have enough overlap for it to work with with more than one station. And in situations like that, there's a great economic advantage to being able to share that programming with that other station. So basically what it is, the idea, the concept, is to share programming that's successful in other stations with stations that are either less successful or could use that programming for a shared demographic. So.
Thank you. Sharon?
Well, the program council did exist in the past. It was something that was part of KPFA. And as I understand it, it was responsible for bringing some good programs to KPFA. And I really don't know the history of why it is no longer there. But it does kind of get to that same question of the power over programming. And it's interesting because listeners, it is what they talk to us about. They always want to talk about programming, and we really have no power over it. And I want to say our general manager, Quincy McCoy, has come to, or I'm not sure when he said this, but he said to me, he considers himself to be the steward of the airwaves. And I believe that at least I believe the local station board should support him. I believe he has been a good steward. I think the numbers of our membership, the fact that we have the greatest membership within the Pacifica network, show that he has been a good steward, and I feel that that's where I kind of come down on the programming issue.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah. There have been people who've been involved with KPFA and Pacifica for 20, 30, 40 years. They know the history of the fight around program councils. Those people do not share that history with those of us who are newer to the station, but you can hear it. There's rumblings about it. And I think that may break down along the paid and unpaid staff. So we'll hear from some of the other members of the LSB, well, how do you make programming decisions? What about these program councils? Well, someone will bring it up, but they won't discuss the history. And I don't know what that history is, but there's been a big fight around this, and it's led to some of the factionalism, or it's part of the factionalism. That's why our group's called United for Independent Radio, because we're trying to get the factions to come together. So there's been a lot of warfare around the issue of program councils. And I've invited some of the people who are in favor of program councils, who are not part of our group, to come forward and tell me why they think it would be a good thing to have program councils, and tell me what was the problem with them before that led to their demise, because they did exist, et cetera, et cetera. But that never happens. But there is this undercurrent. So my attitude towards it is, I'm going to let the manager and the program director make decisions about programming, because I don't know how anybody gets onto a program council. I could keep talking, sorry. But anyway,
Thank you.
Okay.
You have another minute to readdress.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm not going to take up much time because I actually don't know the history. I've actually never heard the term program council before tonight. So I've been serving on the board for 3 years, but prior to that, I was just a listener, out there listening to the radio station, and so I don't know much of the history of the governance of the organization. It's been an interesting learning curve for me. But anyway, I guess what I would say, just to sum it up, is that I don't have any particular objection to the idea of program councils, but I assume that they're not there for a reason within the LSB. And I'd be interested in hearing about that, but I don't know enough to speak on it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get a time check. I actually don't have a time. I don't have a.
I can get.
I don't have a
over
clock.
There if I can get it. I just didn't. Yeah, I didn't want to just step up and do.
Sorry for the cut.
It's okay.
In the program, this is the first
it
of our.
It is 7:21.
Okay, 7:21. So I think actually we'll probably move on to closing statements.
Okay.
So unless you wanted to have another round, just to keep on time.
I think we should.
Well, how much time were we supposed to have?
An hour.
Oh, okay.
Did we have one topic? Was there one topic that you wanted
I don't know,
to hit?
the governance,
Governance?
governance, bylaws. Some of the
Bylaws?
stuff that to me are more.
You can say it in your closing statement. Bring it up in your closing statement.
How long is the closing statement?
We'll give you guys 2 minutes each.
Could we maybe go around twice with 1 minute statements?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
That way we can see what
Okay.
topics get covered between the three of us.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
No problem. So we're going to
Yeah.
close this
Start with
first debate with 2 rounds
Okay.
of closing statements.
I'm ready. Okay.
Sharon?
I just
Sharon
would like to
Alex.
say, yes, thank you, Renee, for doing this and for hosting this, and for all that you've been doing as the National Election Supervisor. Yes, I'm a member of United for Independent Radio also, and I think all of us here on this particular panel are, and we have worked together. I also have just joined the LSB 3 years ago and was just a listener prior to that also, so it has been quite a learning curve about, there's so much history. And it's always convoluted and never as clear as you think it is when you first hear a story. My thought for the future of KPFA and Pacifica is that we need to expand into social media that is relevant to young people. Your question before about getting into diverse communities sort of assumes that young people listen to radio, and pretty much all the young people I talk to don't, period. They just do not. But YouTube is huge. And of course Facebook and all these things. So I think it would be very nice for KPFA to expand its model. And I guess I'll wait for my next minute to explain maybe how I think that could work.
Thank you. Bill?
Okay, well, what I'm mostly interested in, what I'm working on, is a rewrite of the bylaws. My view is this: if you're going to have a national organization, then you can't have directors solely from each of the stations. Right now, we have 4 directors from each of the 5 stations. And that just leads to incredible factionalism and balkanization. And essentially, each station wants to operate as an independent entity, and yet any decision made by each separate station has legal effects and creates legal obligations on all the other stations. And so right now, that is not a model that can exist. So we need a different structure for the board. And I'm working on a different structure that has at-large directors as well as station directors. And the at-large directors are designed to look at the network as a whole and to approach the issue of governance as a whole, so that we can operate as a national network if we're going to have a national network.
Thank you.
That's my
Chris,
minute.
Cory?
First of all, thanks, Renee. You're a powerhouse. You're doing like 5 jobs right now, and I just don't understand how you do it. Like I said in my opening statement, my primary focus is the financial condition of the organization as a whole. And Bill's right. The ticking time bomb out there is the $3.2 million loan, which we're currently not paying any interest on. It's coming out of an escrow account. And once those escrow funds are used up, we'll have to start paying interest on the loan. That's the first whammy. That'll be if I remember correctly, it's in the $20,000 to $25,000 a month range, the interest, which isn't overwhelming. But then the balloon payment comes due when the loan comes due, and that'll be the full force of the $3.2 million loan will come down on the throat of Pacifica. And at that point in time, if we don't have our ducks in a row, it's going to create another crisis very similar to the one that we've endured over the last couple of years. And I will, in my second minute, explain how we might get around that.
Thank you. Sharon?
Okay, I just want to sort of pick up a little bit on what Chris was saying, because yes, I think the financial situation of Pacifica as a whole is huge, and it's a big, big issue. On the other hand, being on the local station board, I don't have a lot of power to do anything about that. Chris is on the Pacifica National Board now, so he has more influence in that. But to finish what I was saying before about the model, I think, for example, some news networks like the Real News Network has a model where you subscribe monthly and you can get unlimited streaming of their content. Otherwise, their content is free. So there's different models for generating revenue within KPFA and within Pacifica as a whole. And that's what I would like to do. People use Patreon as a way to fund individual programming, and I think there might be a way to do that for KPFA because we have content. KPFA has a lot of great content, and to use a capitalistic word, we need to monetize our content because so many sites don't have content. And yet, so I think that there's a way to go forward. I know some people within Pacifica are trying to push for underwriting as a way to overcome our financial issues, and I really disagree with that as a strategy. I think it's much better to focus on our content and using different models to help pay. Maybe people would subscribe to different levels of content, or I don't know how it could work out, but that's where I would like to see things go.
Thank you. Sharon Adams.
Thank you.
Bill
Well,
Campisi.
to return to the subject of national management of the 5 stations, our listeners should understand that 3 of the 5 stations are failing financially. They're in very bad shape. But national management has a great deal of difficulty doing anything about that, again, because of the structure of the organization. KPFA, with its 16,000, 17,000 members, can amend the bylaws. The members can amend the bylaws of Pacifica. There's a way to do it. And so it's not just a pie in the sky idea. The National Board is not going to amend the bylaws that would put them out of existence in their current form. That's not going to happen. But the members can do that. But it would take a lot of effort on the part of a large number of KPFA subscribers. They'd have to endorse a set of bylaws and vote in large numbers to pass them, and then they would then constitute the bylaws of the organization. We could change the structure of the organization.
Thank you, Bill Campisi.
Yeah.
Chris Cory?
Yeah. So getting back to the issue of finance for the organization, when the loan comes due, I think the primary thought right now is that we'll simply refinance the loan, but unfortunately that does not fix the problem because the loan will still exist, the debt will still exist. We're just kicking the can down the road and collecting interest on that debt, which reduces the amount of working capital that the business has to operate with. So it may be a short-term Band-Aid to fix the problem, but it doesn't actually solve it. And there's only 3 ways out of this. One is to cut costs, which everybody hates and is generally not a very good idea because they tend to be cut in the wrong places, especially with ineffective management. The second is to raise revenue, which everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to do it, but I have to say I've been here in this organization for 3 years and we have not done it. And I don't think we've done it in the last 13 years. So I'm not confident about raising revenue either. And the third way to do it is to sell assets, which is unfortunately, I think, where this is heading. And so unless this organization can come to grips with some of these bigger issues, the ability to raise revenue by working together as a collective organization, we are going to eventually be up against the wall and have to sell assets. That's the only way that we're going to get out of this. And I hate to be the bearer of the hard truth, but I think that is the hard truth.
Well, thank you very much. I think this closes the debate. I was joined by Sharon Adams, Bill Campisi, and Chris Cory. Thank you very much. Please find more information on elections.pacifica.org and please vote. The election closes March 5th. And contact me and I'll put some contact information here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Renee.
Thanks.
Thanks, Renee.
Thanks, Renee.
Yeah, no problem.
Did you find that interesting?